Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I am Mark Lewis, Channel Specialist for End User Computing Solutions at VMware Canada. It's an understatement to say that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed every facet of our lives over the last few weeks. Organizations everywhere, including businesses, educational institutions, and public venues such as airports and stadiums, are all adapting to these times. As VMware's CEO, Pat Gelsinger, articulated, this will permanently change the way we work, learn, connect, worship, and simply how we live in community with each other. These changes are manifesting in some obvious and less intuitive ways as organizations look to maintain productivity, network use, and application consumption patterns. Over the next hour, VMware and CDW Canada will share with you our solutions and best practices to help Canadian businesses quickly set up their remote workforces for success. I'd like to remind all attendees that any Q&A can be submitted via the chat feature at the bottom of your WebEx screen. At this time, I will turn the call over to Ryan Blumenauer, Senior End User Computing Specialist with VMware. Ryan?
Thank you, Mark. And James, next slide. Thank you. So what we're going to start off with today is really one solution, Workspace One. And really what is Workspace One? Well, it's a combination of products, as you can kind of see here. It's a one-stop shop, whether it's a web-based portal or application an end user can have on their device to give them access to all of their web-based applications, virtual applications, or if you're using any type of VDI solution, you can even publish those desktops to this web portal or application. But it's above and beyond that, just not a one-stop shop for applications, but you can also leverage our single sign-on capabilities with Workspace One Access. And we'll hear more about that from my colleague Boyd McCarter here in just a bit. But at the heart of it all is what you're probably more familiar with, which is formerly known as AirWatch. And that's how we actually manage the physical endpoints that are getting access to all of these applications. Slide. So where I'm going to start is actually kind of around the complete PC lifecycle delivered from the cloud. So this is where we can actually go ahead and configure all the way down to the BIOS level controls, firmware settings directly from the cloud console. Also modern PC management, which we'll see more here in just a second. And then also delivering those applications and data security directly from a cloud-based console to a PC that typically would have to be on network, but now can reside anywhere. Slide. So really, we're not just talking about PC management, though. Maybe it's not a Win 10 device. Maybe it is Mac OS. Maybe it is a iPhone or an iPad, or maybe we're talking about an Android. Workspace One goes above and beyond just your typical iOS and Android, and as you can see, we'll even manage Chromebooks. Next slide. So one feature we're actually going to talk about here within Workspace One would be Assist. So we have remote employees, or maybe we're planning to have remote employees. Typically when an issue occurred, they came down to your office, or maybe you had a tech that went out to them. Well, we really don't have those in these times today. So Workspace One Assist allows you to remote in and be able to see what the end user is seeing. If it is an iOS device, it's strictly a remote view, but at least you can walk them through what steps to take to remedy their issue. Or maybe we're talking about an Android or a Win 10 device, and you get full remote control with those devices. So that way you can take control of the screen, you can go through, you can get access to the files necessary, you can make any kind of changes necessary. So that way, it's again, just like having them in your office, but being able to assist remotely. Slide. And as you can see here, here's kind of that feature list across all those different platforms. As I mentioned, with Windows 10, Windows CE, and Android, it will actually have that full remote view and full remote control capabilities. With iOS and macOS, it is just that view mode only. Slide. Perfect. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Boyd McCarter.
Thanks, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, my name is Boyd McCarter. I'm also an end-user computing specialist here within the business unit at VMware. What I'm going to talk with you about today is the portion of Workspace ONE that is devoted to application access. So really what we're looking for or looking to do is enable anywhere, anytime access on any device. The solution that we have for that within Workspace ONE is called Workspace One Access. Workspace ONE, of course, is the solution that is delivering conditional access and from any device to any application, while also delivering consumer simple user experiences for the user. And what we mean by consumer simple is that this is an enterprise computing experience that really seeks to mirror the way that users deal with their private applications and resources on their own personal devices. So what this is, what this means is that we want to provide a familiar, intuitive, and compelling solution for the end user to use to access all of their corporate resources, but with the enterprise-grade security that the organization needs. So we're able to expand the security perimeter around an ever-growing and vast ecosystem of applications, whether those are web and SaaS applications, mobile applications, or virtualized desktops and applications, and being able to access those from any device. Next slide, please. All right, as you can see here, I kind of mentioned it, the heart of Workspace ONE is really Workspace One Access, and we're able to provide compliance with applications and other third-party partners that provide identity services and things like that. Workspace ONE, of course, is essentially an access decision engine that consumes information from the Workspace ONE platform and from partner organizations. So Access acts as a broker to other identity providers and other identity stores to include AD, Azure Active Directory, Okta, and some of those that you see there on the slide. What Access does is that it takes inputs from these sources, including Workspace ONE UEM, which Ryan talked about, and Workspace ONE Intelligence, which is our analytics and automation platform, and it combines this information to make intelligent access decisions. So it's not just a simple yes or no decision. Access has the ability to implement a range of access challenges depending on the specifics of the user, their device, their location, and that intelligence information. Access can then authenticate a login, prompt for multi-factor authentication, implement conditional access policies, require step-up authentication if circumstances change or if confidential information is being accessed, and then finally implement single sign-on to mobile and web or SaaS applications, hosted desktops or hosted applications. Next slide, please. So what we're doing is with Workspace ONE, we're providing, or Workspace ONE Access, we're providing the tools for IT to improve security of corporate information out of the box and help organizations that are finding it difficult to kind of know where to start. You can see the 5 stages listed here for improving security and moving toward kind of a zero trust model. Our continuous adaptive risk and trust assessment, CARTA. So we've got the ability to do password, multi-factor, conditional access, risk-based conditional access, and then continuous contextual monitoring through Workspace ONE Intelligence. Next slide, please. Kind of work through the the animations there. This is just a little slide to demonstrate the experience, or kind of give a picture of the experience for the end user. We've got one centralized hub for accessing applications through single sign-on, and these can be, as I mentioned, virtual apps, SaaS applications, and on the mobile devices, iOS, Android, mobile applications as well. So if I need to install an app on my device, if I need to access a public or a SaaS application, or I need to go access a virtual desktop that I've been given rights to access from basically any device. Access is going to give me one centralized location through the Workspace One Intelligent Hub, and then all of the authentication and everything is going to be passwordless and seamless for me as the end user. All that's going to be handled through Workspace One Access on the back end between the apps and the sources that they're calling on for authentication. Next slide, please. Excellent. So the end result is then for the end user, this self-service unified workspace. So I can take this anywhere. If I'm working off of a tablet, if I'm working off of a Mac, laptop, or my own Windows laptop, or a smartphone, I've got seamless access to any application on any of those devices that I want to use through the Workspace One UEM service or solution and the Workspace One Access identity management solution. And with that, I will pass it over to James Brimmer.
There we go. So thanks, Boyd. Thanks, Ryan. I'm James Brimmer, an EC specialist located up here in Ontario. Really been working more focused on VDI solutions in the past little while with education and healthcare, but right now I'm going to walk you through kind of what we can provide in terms of either a VDI solution or remote apps, just enough to get your people up and running with a secured access to the applications they need to do their job, or a full-on secured desktop in case they're coming from a remote computer or a non-managed or non-corporate computer. So as we've all kind of realized in the last 2 weeks here, it's what happens on day one when 80% of your workforce needs to go work from home. What do you do now? We've kind of gone through a few things with this. It was obviously somewhat planned for us, or planned through us, or thought through us, but also we don't know all the answers either, and we're trying to help figure out what the best way of doing this is. But really, we started from a point. There's a mandate that obviously everybody has. There's a constraint, and time is obviously one of them. We need to get going immediately. And then the urgency is obviously getting everything done immediately. This has really been kind of a function of all business these days. Everybody's been shut down, so this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But we have a lot of questions around, VPN security. How do we get cloud applications? How do people get within the, what were traditionally the perimeter of our building to get access to the network, get access to the applications to do the correct job? So we have a few options around VDI, and Brian and Boyd did a great job describing UEM modern management. But I'm going to take you kind of through some flows, take you through some decision-making paradigms of how you might look at this from a VDI perspective. If you already have VMware Horizon or any other VDI for that matter, quite a simple answer is really to expand your deployment. If you have the hardware capacity to do so, if you're architected to do so, it's a fairly simple. I mean, I always say it's not always the best thing. All it takes is money, but it is definitely a quick way to get everybody access to an image from either their home computer or the laptop that they brought home. As Boyd and Ryan mentioned, UEM and modern management, it's a very safe and secure way for mobile device management. We can manage Windows 10 machines, and we can also manage anything from a COPE to a BYO. So what Boyd was really referencing with Workspace One Access, that has a lot of implications in BYO scenarios. So I can access that environment from any device that I want to, and it is completely end-to-end secure. We can have DLP controls around what data comes down to that device, but the person can do their job. And that really gets to kind of a minimal viable product for kind of what we call a day one scenario of resolution. When we get starting to develop the solution a little further, we can get into conditional and contextual access. So as people start to leave their houses, maybe they're going to Starbucks or they're going to wherever, and we can have contextual access around, my Wi-Fi access, for instance. So I can only make sure that it's, coming from a secure connection and not some wide open, to attack connections, so I can ensure the security of my infrastructure. Moving on from that, we also have cloud-based desktops. So those are delivered from either Azure or AWS or our IBM software. We have variations of solutions for each one of those, and I will go over those in a little bit more detail. Really depends on what you need, though. That really comes down to, is it just a basic need to get out the image in a quick, easy fashion, in a consumable manner that it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to get everything stood up? We can get everything stood up fairly quickly, and how we go through that. Another thing that we haven't really discussed here, but it's a universal access gateway, and that's a way of getting back into your virtualized infrastructure or virtualized applications in order to leverage those on computers that are outside of your environment or outside of the four walls of your building right now. And something that is fairly new to us, we whipped it together basically because of COVID. We have the ability through Horizon to remote into physical desktops. So if you have developers or graphic designers or somebody who has a fairly large machine on their desk sitting there that's still powered on, we do have the ability to access those through Horizon in a very seamless fashion. So I won't go over it too much. I do have a document, but I would suggest that if you are interested in that we engage with one of our engineers and we go through it in detail to see if it's a solution for you. So disaster preparedness. I'm sure you've all gone through many of these scenarios right now. We had a day zero, obviously, around 2 weeks ago. We've kind of gotten through day one, but I think right now we're in probably around the respond phase of a disaster preparedness. Once we get into the day two and further going on, we can actually start to really assess what this might look like as more of a permanent solution. I just read today, here in Ontario, things are basically going to be shut down throughout May, or throughout until May. That includes schools, it includes a lot of parks and public areas. I don't know what it means for business. I don't have a crystal ball whatsoever, but it'd be safe to assume that we're at least in this for another month. So how we respond to this and how we start to review it and kind of take a view of what works, what doesn't, we can start to build out an actual proper solution. And hopefully, sometime in the June-July timeframe, we can look back at how we all really looked at this and really reacted to this. And if we were set up for success from the start with the solutions we already had in place, if we had to go spend some money to get some things enabled, or if we had to go, we just weren't prepared at all, and we have to figure out what we're going to do. I do want to make it clear throughout this presentation, we are here to position some things that are really not just break fix or band-aid solutions right now. You can build off of these to actually really create a more agile environment for yourselves moving forward, giving you the ability to work from home. I firmly believe that some people have probably worked their last day in an office throughout this. Some people they've gone home, they've started to work from home, they've proved they're productive to their management, and IT's proved to them that they can actually do this. So there's going to be a lot of barriers broken down in terms of that work from home stigma, and people are going to start doing it more and more often. And there's a lot of benefits to that. There's a lot of pros and cons that each industry and each organization has to weigh themselves. But I truly think that it is going to change the way that we go to work moving forward. For VDI options, we have this really complicated flowchart, but it's really not all that bad. It just basically says, if you have Horizon, let's look at either scaling up Horizon or using Horizon to access physical desktops. If you don't, we would be interested to know if you are using either Azure or AWS in some capacity right now. We do have offerings on both. Each one is fairly different. However, it accomplishes the same thing. It's just architected much differently. We also do have IBM available to you, or IBM software cloud delivered desktops available as well. We'd have to go through that. If that is something that you're interested in, please contact your CDW rep and they'll connect you with either myself or one of my counterparts. In terms of the differences between each of our Horizon offerings, yeah, I find this slide's really kind of clear on how we manage everything and what we take care of versus what you need to take care of. So obviously, if it's on premise, you're taking care of the whole stack. You're taking care of the hardware, all the data center stuff, vSphere, Hyper, whatever it might be on the vSphere's SDDC. Also, the Horizon platform, so all the vCenter, Horizon nodes, pools, and then all the desktops and apps as well. As we get into AWS, really what's managed by VMware is everything up to the hypervisor. So we manage everything and you build off of it. So that those components, so the Horizon platform, you'd manage your pools and your vCenter again, but then and obviously your desktops and apps because that's your data. If we get into IBM and Azure, IBM obviously VMware manages the hardware right up to the Horizon platform. So all you're doing is going into the Cloud Console and really deploying the desktop that you want, whatever version of Windows 10 it might be. Whether it be on an image, you can use app stacks, you can use however you want to deploy those services or applications out to your people is how you'd use that. And then a unique one is Azure. So from a hardware perspective, Microsoft manages that. If you already have an Azure relationship or a Microsoft relationship and have some Azure tokens or credits, whatever they're calling them these days, you are able to utilize those for your Azure consumption. This is truly desktop as a service option. It is consumption based from a resource perspective, and we do have options around monthly or annual licensing for our licenses. And they are subscription based, so it would be the ability to just buy a month or two upfront. And beyond that, if you have our subscription licensing already in place for Horizon on Azure, if you need to burst your capacity as things go up and down, or you don't know exactly how much you're going to need, we suggest a minimum viable baseline of what you'd look at, which it starts at 50 devices. But you can burst up and down from that, and we'd bill you in arrears. So whatever you use for the month, above that 50 licenses, we would then bill you for that. Benefits of Horizon Cloud on Azure is we have a very strategic relationship with Microsoft. I know a lot of the times in a lot of product lines, we are very competitive with them. But in order to enable Azure and drill down Azure consumption for Microsoft, we've obviously combined with them in a very meaningful way. You can run a virtual application or desktop workload from anywhere of 40 Azure data centers worldwide, including Azure government. So if you do, that's only in the US. But if you did want to do that, you can do that. And realistically, it is a true consumption-based model. I know we have to obviously pay by the month for our licenses, but I think Azure bills right down to the minute, if not even lower than that. But I would encourage you to talk to your Microsoft rep and your CDW rep around what your Azure environment might look like. And the best part is if you're an existing Azure customer, you can easily set up and manage a Cloud Deliver app or desktop within. We've seen these things be set up within 5 days of people going from zero to up and running very quickly. It does take a lot of effort, and it is not an easy task, but it's definitely doable. To be clear on this, Horizon 7 on VMC for AWS is not desktop as a service. You are managing the Horizon stack. You are managing the RDSH farms, the desktop pools. All that needs to be managed by somebody, and that is, definitely, essentially, it's on-premise architecture that's just run out of AWS, for lack of a better word, and we handle everything from the hypervisor down. And as you can see, versus the Azure model over there, it's just a little bit different. So as I discussed kind of earlier, the transformational framework, I think before we all came into this, we were all looking at kind of an operational model, which was, service operations, system operations, and support operations. What we can start to think of and what we're really, this whole work from home, I'll call it an experiment, forced experiment maybe, is really kind of changing some people's strategy around how they want to deliver the IT services to the customer, which is the end user. And that really drives into a service model. So it's a lot of discovery and it's a lot of discussions around what your baseline might look like. And that can be a lot of things: a security baseline, an image baseline, an application baseline. Who needs what? Who needs to operate how? How we do everything access wise, and running from there. And then we design everything out and execute on it to really develop a holistic solution of how you can deliver your IT resources and IT services to your end user. And then obviously, nothing's very well done unless it gets adopted. If nobody uses it, it can be the best product in the world. It doesn't really matter. But there's got to be an adoption strategy, and it really starts with communication, and it really starts with either you take a transformational approach holistically. There's really no dipping your toe in this, unfortunately. You either do it or you don't, because your end users are only going to really accept one way of doing their job. They're going to think that, I've been set up with, here's the idea of how I go to work every day. I need to operate in that so that I know how to do my job. So if you do operate with a service model, that adoption strategy is definitely key. I have a lot of further reading things I'm going to include with a follow-up email from your CDW rep. I will include all of these for your consumption if you want to look through them. I'll have another few items on there in terms of what we can do, just kind of highlight whatever it might be that you are interested in. From us, please engage with your CDW rep, and they'll engage with the appropriate VMware rep from there. I will also share a few other links and splash pages that we have for our business continuity plans. There's a lot of information around just everything we can do outside of EUC2, so around VeloCloud that I don't think I can touch on. I can't even do it justice because I don't really know enough about it, but has a lot of networking capabilities for us. And then there are a few other options there, and some suggestions too, some things that have been driven down by our senior management of how we're doing things, our experience with other customers. If you are interested in hearing more about that, please engage with your CDW rep. And beyond that, Mark, was there any questions that were in the chat?
I believe we responded to all the questions that were in the chat, but just a reminder to all attendees, please put your questions in the chat and we will get them responded to for you. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Sure. I do see one in here about recommended around conducting current state desktop assessments as a first step.
So for that question, we do have the SysTrack assessment tool that is available in the TechZone blog, techzone.vmware.com/tools. So I will put that into the broader chat room as well. Thank you.
Okay. For that individual, if I would suggest engaging with your VMware rep as well, EUC rep. There might be a few other things that are available. And it's a great idea to kind of figure out where you're coming from. Just because there's so many variables that go into that of how people are going to access and how people are what you want to get out to them. It could point in many different directions. So I just want to be sure that you get the kind of proper information. And if you want to engage with through CDW to your VMware rep, that'd be fantastic. I turned on my video by accident. If there's no other questions, I think that's all I had. So I'll toss it back to Mark.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your participation. And again, please reach out to your CDW rep with any follow-up questions that you may have with regards to this content. The TechZone site, techzone.vmware.com, is where we posted a lot of technical articles around our solutions, and most of our logs, which are very detailed in terms of VMware's overall COVID-19 response, are available at blogs.vmware.com/EUC end user computing. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. today's session. And again, any follow-up questions, please follow up with your CDW representatives. Thank you very much.